All right, so we're diving into the world of Chris Brown today, and wow, you really weren't kidding about that deep dive part.
Yeah, well, gotta be thorough, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got his entire Wikipedia entry here, 2 YouTube interviews, and even notes from a Drink Champs episode. I'm honestly impressed you managed to wrangle all of this.
I do what I can.
You really do. So, all right, what exactly is our mission here? What's the goal with all this material?
Honestly, Chris Brown is such a fascinating and complicated figure. I think the main goal is just to try to make sense of it all, see if we can understand him a little
I
better.
like it's a kind of a Chris Brown decoded type of deal.
Exactly.
Perfect. So where do we even begin with a career like this?
Well, I always think it's best to start at the beginning, right? I mean, his childhood was pretty rough, and that definitely shaped him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, his parents divorcing when he was 6 is one thing, but then you add in the domestic violence he witnessed with his mom's boyfriend. It's just heavy stuff.
Really heavy, and it
Hmm.
just gets worse when you read about the incident where the boyfriend shot himself when Brown was only 6.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the guy survived, but ended up blind. And according to the Wikipedia entry, it somehow made the abuse towards his mom even worse after that.
Just off. I mean, can you imagine the psychological impact that must have had on this 6-year-old?
Seriously. And it's not like it was just a one-time thing either. Brown himself said he had to listen to his mom getting beat up almost every single night.
Oh, I remember that quote from his documentary, Welcome to My Life. Something like, I'd pee on myself, just scared to even walk out into the hallway because I don't want to see nothing, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
It's just heartbreaking to think about a kid living in that kind of constant fear.
It really is. And it makes you wonder how much of his later troubles stem from those early experiences.
I think it's safe to say that kind of trauma leaves a mark no matter who you are. But then again, there's another side to his upbringing too, right? All that stuff about going to church practically every day and having more church clothes than regular clothes.
It's almost like he was living in 2 completely different worlds. The violence at home, and then this intensely religious environment.
Right. And he actually talked about experiencing the Holy Ghost while singing in church. So it wasn't just going through the motions for him. He felt something there.
So how do those two extremes, fear and faith, come together to shape someone? I mean, it's definitely a lot to unpack.
For sure. But I think it's key to understanding his music too.
Speaking of his music, let's move on to his third album, Graffiti, which he started working on back in 2008.
Ah, yes, Graffiti. This is where he really tried to break out of the R&B mold, right? He was aiming for a sound inspired by Prince and Michael Jackson.
Exactly. He even said something like he wanted to cross over to any genre. So clearly he was reaching for something bigger.
And those are some big shoes to fill. I mean, Prince and Michael Jackson were masters at reinventing themselves and appealing to huge audiences.
But then, of course, the Rihanna incident happened in 2009 and everything changed.
The elephant in the room, yeah, it's impossible to ignore that and the impact it had on his career.
Absolutely, he lost endorsements. Radio stations stopped playing his music. It was a massive shift in public perception, almost overnight.
Do you remember that interview he did with ABC News that year? He was adamant that he'd never had anger problems or been violent before.
I do. It's almost hard to believe now considering how he talks about it in his documentary, where he admits to going from America's sweetheart to public enemy number one.
Such a stark contrast, right? It really shows how his perspective changed over time.
For sure. And it makes you wonder how much of that was genuine reflection versus damage control.
Good point. But either way, Graffiti came out right in the middle of all this, and I feel like it really suffered because of it.
No doubt, even though he poured everything into it, he wrote almost all the songs himself and really pushed for that genre-bending sound he wanted.
It's like he was trying to give his fans what they were used to with the upbeat stuff while also expressing remorse through those power ballads.
It's kind of like a microcosm of his career, constantly trying to balance these different sides of himself.
I see that, yeah. But ultimately, Graffiti just didn't take off the way his previous albums had commercially or critically.
Definitely not. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200, which for him at that time was a huge drop.
And the reviews were pretty harsh too, although I think it did get a couple Grammy nominations.
It did, but even with that, it only sold around 341,000 copies by 2011, a far cry from his earlier success.
It really goes to show how much an artist's personal life can overshadow their work, no matter how good it might be.
Totally. And then in 2011, he dropped FAME, which he cleverly explained stood for Forgiving All My Enemies.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one. And the lead single, yeah, 3X did pretty well internationally, right?
It did, but it was Look at Me Now featuring Lil Wayne and Busta Rhymes that really blew up.
That song was everywhere. It was the best-selling rap song of the year.
And what's crazy is even with all the negativity surrounding him, people couldn't deny the quality of the music.
It was a reminder that he was still a phenomenal artist at his core, even if his personal life was a mess.
Then came X in 2013, and it felt like he was trying to mature his sound even more.
Yeah, the track Home that he released before the album really hinted at that, reflecting on the downsides of fame and all that.
And Fine China, the lead single, was a hit with critics. They loved the soulful 70s vibe.
It was definitely a step away from the more pop-heavy stuff he'd been doing before.
And then there was that collaborative album with Tyga, Fan of a Fan. The album in 2015, which was actually a follow-up to a mixtape they did back in 2010.
I remember that they have a good chemistry together.
They do.
Yeah.
Plus, he was featured on DJ Dioro's 5 More Hours that same year, so he was staying busy and showing up in different genres.
Always hustling.
And then later that year, he released Royalty, which he dedicated to his daughter.
That's sweet. Liquor was the first single from that one, right?
Yep, and he actually dropped a 34-track mixtape called Before the Party Leading Up to the Album Release. Talk about a generous appetizer.
34 tracks. That's more than some artists' entire discographies.
No kidding. But Royalty debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, so it clearly resonated with people. And he also directed and released 8 music videos that told the whole story.
Wow, that's impressive. A lot of work went into that project.
He's definitely not afraid of hard work. And then we got Heartbreak on a Full Moon in 2017, which was a double album. Ambitious, to say the least.
A double album. Did that even fit on a CD?
It probably took 2. And then in 2019, he released Indigo. This was interesting because it was a reunion with Scott Storch, who produced his very first hit, Run It.
So I'm in full circle, huh?
Right. And he also signed a new deal with RCA Records where he actually owned his masters, which is a huge deal for any artist, but especially someone at his level.
Total game changer. It means he has complete control over his music and a lot more financial freedom.
Exactly. And Indigo is also where he and Drake finally buried the hatchet and collaborated on No Guidance.
So that was a big moment considering their history. It seemed like they'd be at odds forever.
It did, but the song was a smash hit, peaked at number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, and even got nominated for a Grammy.
Proof that good music can sometimes overcome personal drama.
Moving on to 2022, he dropped his 10th studio album, Breezy, appropriately named after his nickname.
I remember him saying he wanted to make music specifically for women's soul with that one.
Yeah, he was going for something really heartfelt and endearing, and the singles Iffy and We, Warm Embrace, definitely had that vibe.
Plus, he went on tour with Lil Baby that year. 2 very different artists, but it seemed to work.
Totally different, but sometimes opposites attract. And he also won International Artist of the Year at the 2022 Headies Awards for his influence on Afrobeats.
That's impressive. It shows his impact goes way beyond the U.S.
And here's a funny one, remember, Under the Influence. The song that blew up on TikTok in 2022.
Of course, it was everywhere.
Well, that song was actually from the extended edition of Indigo from way back in 2019.
No way, seriously.
Seriously, it just goes to show you never know what's going to go viral these days.
So true. And thanks to that, it became his 50th top 40 hit, making him the first R&B singer to reach that milestone.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, he got to perform as a special guest during Usher's Vegas residency that year.
Sharing the stage with a legend like Usher, not bad at all.
But there was also that controversy with the American Music Awards when they canceled his Michael Jackson tribute performance.
Oh yeah, I remember that sparked a lot of backlash from his fans and even some people in the industry.
It did. Some felt it was disrespectful to cancel a tribute to another Black music icon, especially considering it was Chris Brown.
It was a lose-lose situation no matter what they did.
Exactly. But despite that, his Under the Influence tour in Europe the following year was a complete sellout, including his first UK concert since he was banned back in 2010.
Talk about a comeback.
He also broke some records that year, surpassing Elvis Presley for the most gold-certified singles by a male artist and landing 10 #1 hits on Billboard's R&B hip-hop airplay chart.
Pretty amazing considering all the ups and downs he's been through.
He was also co-headlining festivals like Rolling Loud in Thailand, so he was making his presence known globally.
So even with all the baggage, he was still a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely, and then in 2023, he released his 11th studio album, 11.11.
Wasn't that the one with the numerology concept?
He said he was going to have 11 tracks, but ended up releasing 22.
Doubled it up, huh?
Sure did. And the lead single, Summer Too Hot, even got a Grammy nomination.
Always aiming high.
But it was the second single, Sensational, featuring Loj and Davido, that really took off.
That was a great song, and it actually gave both Loj and Davido their first entries on the Billboard Hot 100.
Exactly. Talk about a power move.
I also read that the album got some of the best reviews of his career. Critics praised its maturity and R&B focus.
It did. It debuted at #1 on Billboard's top R&B albums chart, too.
So a critical and commercial success.
He also performed in the Middle East that year and even made a comment about evil and genocide in Palestine during a concert in Dubai, which obviously caused a stir.
Never a dull moment with him, is there?
Not at all. And then in 2024, he dropped the deluxe version of 11.11, adding 13 more tracks and features from artists like Lil Wayne and Bryson Tiller.
Ah, yes, the deluxe edition. That's where the diss track aimed at Quavo came from, right?
Yep, and that started a whole back and forth between them with even more diss tracks flying around.
Gotta love a good rap feud as long as it stays in the music.
Exactly, but musically he was killing it that year too. He sold out stadium shows in Johannesburg and Sao Paulo.
Stadium shows that's a whole other level of success.
He's at the top of his game. And then to top it all off, 11.11 Deluxe won the Grammy for Best R&B Album at the 2025 Grammys.
Wow, a Grammy win after all this time. That's got to feel good.
Talk about a vindication. And he's already announced a huge stadium tour for 2025 with Summer Walker and Bryson Tiller.
He's not slowing down anytime soon, that's for sure.
Not even a little bit. But now let's address the elephant in the room, the thing that hangs over his entire career.
The Rihanna incident?
Exactly. No matter what else he accomplishes, that event will always be a part of his story.
It's a permanent stain on his reputation, and it's hard to know how much he's truly reckoned with it personally.
I mean, he went from claiming he'd never been violent before to admitting he became public enemy #1.
And that shift in perspective happened over years. It makes you wonder what that journey of self-reflection was like for him.
Yeah, and then there are all the other legal issues he's had. The Drake fight, the Frank Ocean altercation, the hit and run, the arrest in D.C., the probation violations. It just goes on and on.
It's a pattern of behavior that's hard to ignore, and it makes you question whether he's truly learned from his mistakes.
Then there's the lawsuit from his former manager, the restraining order from Kiro Tran, the copyright infringement cases, the gun incident. It's a lot to process.
It really paints a picture of someone who's constantly surrounded by conflict and chaos.
And in 2022, there was that $20 million lawsuit alleging rape, which he denied and ultimately got dismissed.
Even though it was dismissed, the damage was already done. These kinds of accusations stick with you.
They do. And then there's the whole issue of his mental health and addiction.
That's a huge part of his story, too. He's talked about battling bipolar II disorder and PTSD and how he's used substances to self-medicate.
It's a reminder that behind the fame and fortune, he's still a human being struggling with real issues.
And addiction doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone.
But let's talk about some of his other talents, like his dancing.
Oh, man, his dancing is insane. He's constantly being compared to Michael Jackson.
The comparisons are definitely warranted. He's incredibly gifted, and he incorporates those skills into his music videos, too.
It adds a whole other dimension to his performances.
And he's even dabbled in acting, though. His appearance on Blackish caused some controversy.
People have strong opinions about him, that's for sure.
But you can't deny his artistic talent. He's also a skilled graffiti artist and painter.
Yeah, I've seen some of his work. It's pretty impressive.
He's even had pieces sold at auction, and he created that amazing Kobe Bryant mural.
It's cool to see him expressing himself through different mediums.
Definitely. And in interviews, he's talked about how much he values artistic control and expressing his own perspective through his music.
Makes sense considering all the scrutiny he's under.
He even estimated that he's made over 10,000 songs, which is just mind-blowing.
That's dedication right there.
He's also made some interesting comments about relationships, calling himself a ladies' man, but acknowledging the importance of consent.
It's good to hear him address that, considering his past.
He's also given advice to younger artists about balancing work and personal life, and even offered tips on how to get a good night's sleep.
Sounds like he's trying to share some wisdom he's picked up along the way.
Maybe so. And he's also mentioned that he realized he could paint all the way back in kindergarten.
A natural-born artist.
And he finds it weird to listen to his own music during intimate moments.
I can see why that would be awkward.
He also identifies primarily as an R&B artist, but enjoys dabbling in other genres, which is obvious from his discography.
He's always pushing boundaries and experimenting.
And speaking of boundaries, he even shared a story about getting paid to help other students with their schoolwork when he was a kid.
Sounds like he's always been a bright one.
And he's talked about his childhood experiences with corporal punishment, too.
A lot of layers to this guy, that's for sure.
Definitely. And it's clear that his early influences were Prince, Michael Jackson, and Stevie Wonder, which makes sense considering his desire to appeal to a wide audience.
Yeah, those are some heavy hitters to be inspired by.
He's also always strived to push beyond the typical R&B sound, and the Michael Jackson comparisons have been there since the beginning of his career.
Early on, people were even calling him this generation's Michael
A
Jackson.
lot to live up to.
For sure. And he's also expressed admiration for Usher, another R&B icon.
So let's wrap things up by going over some of his accolades. He finally won a Grammy for Best R&B Album for 11.1 in Deluxe at the 2025
A
Grammys.
long time coming.
He's also racked up American Music Awards, BT Awards, Soul Train Music Awards, and countless Billboard chart records.
He's basically broken every record there is to break in the R&B world.
He's one of the best-selling R&B artists of all time and even holds Vivo records.
It's hard to argue with that level of success.
So what have we learned from this deep dive? Well, Chris Brown is a complex and contradictory figure, a talented artist with a troubled past who's achieved phenomenal success while constantly battling personal demons.
He's a walking paradox, someone who can inspire and disappoint in equal measure.
His music continues to resonate with millions, but the shadow of his past actions always looms large.
It forces us to grapple with the question of whether we can separate the art from the artist.
And it makes you wonder how his story will ultimately unfold, what legacy he'll leave behind.
It's a question without an easy answer.
So what stands out to you most about Chris Brown? What questions are still swirling in your head? This deep dive is just a starting point. There's always more to uncover.
Exactly. He's a fascinating subject for a reason.
And as you continue to think about his career, consider how early experiences shape us, how fame can both elevate and destroy, and how we grapple with the complexities of accountability and artistic expression in a world that's always watching.
It's a conversation that goes far beyond just Chris Brown. It's about the nature of celebrity and how we consume and judge art in the digital age.
And with that, we'll leave you to ponder.